Let's turn to Luke. Technically it's Luke 14:1, but just go ahead and turn to Luke 14:7. I actually like people. I like crowds of people. I like going to football games. I know that I retreat at monasteries, but that's just sort of a balance. There's actually people there too, you just can't talk to them. And I'm always aware, though, of what can go on in a crowd. The first thing that I think of is some kind of panic or stampede or some kind of crisis. Maybe somebody shouts fire, or maybe somebody has a gun, God forbid. Stampedes can happen. And there's whole sub-disciplines in architecture and building science that are dedicated to the ingress and the egress of large crowds. But often we don't think of the other dangers of large crowds, and that is the danger of groupthink. Everybody thinking the same thing to the point that facts are ignored and the people that disagree are demonized. This is why the United States of America is a republic and not a democracy. In a democracy, your right to life or economic freedom or religious freedom or liberty of speech can be voted away by the whim of the public or the whim of Congress, which is kind of whimmy right now. In a republic, those rights are God-given and they are defended, usually through a constitution, which we have. But we need to be careful with that because you still have to defend them daily. Even an elected legislature can be kind of group-thinky. But this is all another sermon. Jesus had to deal with a crowd one day. He had to deal with a lot of crowds. But this crowd, it was actually kind of smaller than what he was used to. But they were in full-blown groupthink mode in at least two ways. And I'm going to start with John 14:7 here. Technically, it's supposed to start with 1, but I'm just going to do this. When he noticed how the guests, he's eating a dinner at a leading Pharisee's house. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say, hey, give this person your seat. And then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you're invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. And then you will be honored in the presence of all other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And then Jesus said to the host, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, or your brothers, or your sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back so that you can be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. This is the word of God for the people of God, and all God's people said. So Jesus has been invited to this dinner of this prominent Pharisee, and he's basically being carefully watched by the Pharisees. This is what it actually says in verse 1. They were in full-blown groupthink mode about their religious opinions, and what they're trying to do, I actually heard this term for the first time, not related to playing cards. They were basically trying to sandbag him. I know it sounds weird that I never heard that term, but it just struck me. I thought it was just, what you play hearts and spades with. I didn't think about it. When he racks up all the right sandbags in the right number, they're going to pounce. But they're in groupthink mode about something else. They're in groupthink mode about their own false notions. They are well-to-do people. Remember, this is first century Israel. Many of them own their own lands, which is pretty rare back then. Many of them are upper crust. And back then, upper crust was by birth, not by effort or by success. And therefore, they have a certain amount of long-term, generational, economic, and social status. And so for them, a wedding or a dinner or a party is sort of this perfect opportunity to show off who they are and how much they have and who's more important than whom. And in a rush to show off, they refuse to wait on anybody else, including the host. In this mad stampede, they don't even wait for this host to pass out the honor of the seating arrangement. Now, I know that you're all familiar with the Academy Awards of the Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Basically, it can be viewed as a pack of rich attention seekers gathered on global media to give golden idols to other rich attention seekers. Whoa. Now, interestingly, this may be another sermon, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. The golden idol that they give out has been named, and they name it Oscar. And you can tell it's a fake god because real gods tell you their own names. You don't get to name God. Okay? This is another sermon. Now, what if at the Academy Awards, instead of passing out awards in an orderly fashion with timed speeches and all that, what if the actors and directors just walked forward onto the stage and pushed each other out of the way to grab their coveted statue? Yes, I used the word coveted intentionally. That's the kind of thing that is happening at this dinner party. They're pushing themselves into the seats of high honor. I envision them not having beer bellies, but sort of wine, hummus, and pita bread bellies. Okay? And they're knocking each other around with their guts, kind of like sumo wrestlers. And they're doing all this to show off about what a big deal they are. And one more thing, I bet when they didn't get the seat that they wanted, they will sit there and fume about it the whole party long and not be able to enjoy themselves. Now, why is all this sophomore nonsense going on? At that time, the most distinguished guests would arrive last for a party. So if a pack of these bozos were going to be so silly as to jostle for the seats of honor before the bigwigs got there, they were really setting themselves up for embarrassment. And Jesus is trying to warn them about this. Now, what he says, there's kind of two ways to interpret this. You could have said that Jesus got there first and he sat down in the place of least honor. You could, and it would be perfectly valid. I am going to play devil's advocate. I think because the most honored person gets there last, I think he got there last. And he arrived as they were jostling for position up front by the host. And Jesus witnesses it, and he comments on it. And he says this: when someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. And if so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. And the humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. Now, I don't know if this is a fact. This is not in the Bible. But I bet at that moment, Jesus sat down in the place of least honor, the seat furthest from the host. The last to arrive, seated in the last place. But the lesson was not over. Jesus then talks to the host of the party, and he says to him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends. Really? Don't invite your friends. Don't invite your brothers or sisters. Don't invite your relatives. Don't invite your rich neighbors. And what's he saying there? Don't invite this bunch that you've invited. Can you imagine how insulting that is to the folks who were gathered? Why does he say that? Jesus tells us, if you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. In other words, host, don't invite this bunch. You do that if you want to get paid back in kind, if you want to join the backslapping, wheel-greasing brigade. So what does Jesus mean here? What do we learn from this? First, Christians don't argue over status. We are to serve each other and the world. We are not to request the mantle of leadership. We are not to request honor and place. The Lord Jesus Christ, the King of the universe, the one with all the land and all the titles, and the cattle on 1,000 hills, and more wealth than anybody in the room or history, said to us that the greatest among us would be the servant.
That's right.
He did not say that the greatest among us would be the doormat. There's a difference. That's another sermon. He said servant. Luke 22, he says this: the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. We only want to help you. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you will be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is not the one who is at the table? Is it not the one who is at the table? And I am among you as one who serves. The Lord himself said, I am among you as one who serves. And John records, John 13, that he stripped to the waist, tied a towel around himself, and washed the feet of his disciples. And in that moment, he turned leadership on its head with a basin and a towel in his underwear. And he turned the world on its head at the cross with his blood. There is not a Christian alive who does not need to learn this lesson over and over and over and over and over. Now, the second thing that I take from this is we are to look, we are to take that service and include the poor, and not those who are just materially poor. We should not neglect those who are spiritually poor as well. There are far too many Christians who want to line up to help a bunch of people, but they will neglect a whole section of the population as they drive off the cliff to hell. And that's just not good. Too often they are ignored. We are so worldly sometimes that we are no heavenly good. So the question is, when it comes up, who are we including at the table? Do we include only those that we can benefit from? Do we include only those who are just like us? Or are we actually ready for a real party? Then you have to redefine honor. You have to invite and invest in those who can't pay you back, the one who honor usually never comes to as we define honor, the ones who are ignored. And Jesus says this: when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. I think I've told this story before, but I was in my ordination interviews back in 2005, and I had written the word reward in my ordination paperwork, and I got grilled. It was the most grilled moment I got because I had used the word reward. Well, it's not about reward. It's about God keeping his promises. And I was like, dude, it says in Revelation, he brings his reward with him. You will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. It's not in money. It's in things that in power that you can't describe. So, why should we serve like that? Why should we invite people to the table? Other than because Jesus told us so, other than anticipating some reward, we do it to follow his example. We do it because he came to serve and because he invited us. He invited us to his table, and he does all the time. And in doing so, he redefines honor. In Christ, honor ceases to be another golden idol to show off to a stampeding crowd. Honor is like the love that Jesus showed us on the cross. So look, as we come forward for Holy Communion, please ponder him, the greatest to arrive and the last to arrive, but serving in the deepest possible ways. And as you come to his table, ponder his life and his teaching. Ponder the honor that he has blessed you with. Ponder how the one true God came in the flesh, not to lord over, but to shepherd, to love, to honor, and to serve. Ponder anew, as the hymn says, what the Almighty can do. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do, and what he is doing, and what he will do through anyone who will redefine honor to his definition and live with a servant's heart and invite his people to table.